My name is Jean Guillou. I'm a co-founder and a VP of engineering at Dashlane. I'm based in our New York office. So I'm just going to explain a little bit what Dashlane is. We are building a password management application, and it's a free application for B2C users, where you can generate, store, and secure all of your passwords or any kind of personal information, whether it's contact information, addresses, or even credit cards. And we're going to put that inside our application, and then every time you're browsing on the web, whether it's on your mobile applications or on your browser, we are going to log you in automatically to all websites or fill up any kind of information that you would have to type otherwise, and do that in a very secure way, so you can really focus on the fun part of the internet and do what you want to do. A few words about Dashlane itself. So we founded the company 10 years ago now with two other co-founders in France right after college. So that was it is my first job, essentially. Today we are about 190 employees, and we are based in 3 locations. So Paris in France, where we started, New York in the US, where I'm based today, and Lisbon, as we are here tonight, where we opened this office exactly a year ago, and we are very happy about that. To give you an idea, we have about 10 product and engineering teams, so people that work together to deliver the features, one in New York, one in Lisbon, and most of the engineer in Paris. And we're also hiring a lot, so if you're interested or want to have a look, you can go on our jobs page. So tonight, I want to talk about continuous delivery. And essentially, I want to give you an insight on what we did at Dashlane to really be in a state where we can release all our applications in a very easy way and focus developers on where they bring actual value instead of spending too much time delivering the product on the market. So as an introduction, I'm not going to detail that, but it's just to give you an idea that we have a pretty complex platform because we have actually many platforms. When we release a new version of Dashlane, we have to consider the iOS app, Android app, macOS apps. We have 2, Windows, 3 browser extension, our web application, our website, all our backend infrastructure. So if you want to release all of that every 2 weeks or every week, it's a lot of work from the engineering team. So in a classical view, how does it take to release an application on the market? You're going to try essentially to build a bunch of new features, package them together, and be like, we want to deliver that on the market. We want to make an announcement and some press around it, and this is what we release today, blah, blah, blah. What happens when you do that is the changes that you introduce in your new version are usually huge. It can be weeks, months of work. And what it means is the risk is high. So as you add stuff, the risk grows. And there is a good chance that something is going to go wrong when you release that application. Which means developers are starting to fear a little bit what's going to happen. So to remediate that, you're going to add more processes to make sure you do things in the right way and you check every details. By doing that, you're going to spend a lot of time doing it, validating that everything is okay before releasing. And if it takes time, you're going to do it less often. And then you're in this cycle where you wait, there is more changes, more risk, more fear, more processes, more time, extra. So where we really want to be with continuous delivery is to say we're going to invert completely that. And we're going to say we want to release very frequently. It's hard to achieve, but we'll see how we get there. To release very frequently, what happens is the changes you put on the market are actually very small. The risk is low because everybody in the team knows what was done the week before. Everything is fresh in mind. So the developers and the team are going to feel very confident about what they're releasing, which allow them to have a relatively quick and light process, hopefully automated. And they're going to spend very little time doing that, which allow them to release more often and have frequent releases, small changes, small risk, confidence, etc., etc. So really our goal here is to see what at Dashlane we've put in place to achieve that and to be able to release to production fast, on demand, and really have a automated release pipeline to support all of that. So little step back of where we started a few years ago. We were using an old Mercurial releasing versioning system. We didn't really have a branching strategy. It was a little bit messy. The CI existed, continuous integration was very small and built in-house just for a few scripts that we needed. Limited unit tests, not to say no unit tests. All the testing was doing manually. We didn't have systematic code review. So a lot of weaknesses that we needed to address in order to get better at releasing our application, essentially. So what we did about the code management first. So, you know, migrating to Git, obviously, we chose big buckets. Having a real strategy about how you want to manage your branches. That depends a little bit on the teams, but whether you want to have multiple stages and put rules on how you get code from one branch to another, mandatory pull requests and multiple reviewers on each pull request. And then you can add over time some tools about, so linting to make sure that you don't focus your time reviewing typos and how you format your code, but you really focus the time on the logic and you let the computer do the formatting. Static code analysis, sorry. Make sure that you can catch bugs that are hard to see for you, but that the machine is going to see very easily and see what's going on. And then we get into the actual continuous integration system, which is essentially every time one of the developers on your team is pushing some code on the repository, all the things that you do to check this code and prepare the release that then you're going to put on the market or at least test. So that we chose Bamboo at the time. It's an Atlassian product to run that. So as you can see on the little screenshots, put this screenshot, like I think I took it this week, of all the different plans and platforms that we have to support our business. And in that tool, you're going to put all your unit tests and coverage and make sure that you make all the tests, all the checks before you can actually merge your code. And you're going to automate the build of your application. So for us, it's mostly client application that we're going to deploy to you know, our website or different app store, Play Store, or Google Chrome Store. So you're going to essentially build little artifacts that your QA team can use, and you're going to eventually deploy to production. Test automation is really an important thing, but also a very, very hard thing to achieve. So that's something that we built over time, and we are not there yet, I would say. You have the unit test level that you really need to focus on, but that you leave to the developers. And then you're going to have functional tests, integrated tests, integration tests, and the manual test. For the manual test, we still have a team to test the application manually before we release it to production. But we define very clearly what is the scope of the thing that we want to test manually before an app goes out. So we call it the smoke test. And really defining what that is allowed us to have it as something really clearly defined in the process to release our application every 2 weeks. And for the functional tests, or you can call it an end-to-end test, that is really hard. And you really need to pick the right tool for the right platform. Everything that is web-based is usually more accessible, but when you start to do testing in your iOS app or Android apps, it gets a little more complicated. And make sure to integrate it in the continuous integration. So every time you build an application that you're going to deploy, all of these tests are run automatically and not something as an after thought. We also created a dedicated automation team, QA automation team at Dashlane. So it's essentially a group of developers that are dedicated to building end-to-end tests on top of our application to cover the basics like smoke test, but also when we release a big new feature, we make sure to cover all of that. We have a dedicated team for that. And it's really something that you don't put in place one day and then it runs. It's really something that you need to keep pushing over and over and over yeah, essentially it's a continuous effort across the team to invest on that. One thing I would say as well, I've put like make sure to use results, but what this means is sometimes this automated test system can be a little unstable and tend to break too often. And so if you leave that on the side and you're used to have your tests break, you end up not even looking at the results anymore. So having something that is really stable and make sure that the teams are looking at the results and are actually fixing the bugs when they happen is really important. And then I get to continuous deployment, which is the next step on how you're going to, as much as possible, automate how you deploy all your applications. First thing we do is that we deploy them automatically to our staging environments or even to our internal teams. So people that work at Dashlane always have access to the latest version that comes from the developer, and that's done automatically every day. And then the QA team is going to use these builds to test them. And then what is really important, so for our iOS, Android, Windows, macOS, and all our extensions, we manage to deploy them depending on the platform every week or every 2 weeks. But what is really important is to automate everything you can. So the actual deployment is really one button to click. When everybody is happy, you just click one button and it goes to production. And everything that you can automate, you do. And for all our web-based platforms, so our web application, our websites, and the backend infrastructure, same thing. It's not fully automated, but it's really on demand. And we deploy multiple times a week, and it's one click away from when you want to do it. I'm just going to check. And then after your application is in production, there is a question of monitoring. So we've always had a relatively decent system. I don't know even if you can hear me. A relatively decent system of logging, where you have business logs to make sure that your product is working as expected, and that to see what the user are actually using in your product. You have technical logs, which are going to be errors, exceptions, and things like that you want to check as well. And performance logs to make sure that you don't introduce code that is going to slow down the application or use too much memory. And then we monitor all of that through dashboards, Kibana for the technical stuff, and Tableau for the business metrics. We have alerting systems to know what's going on. And one thing that we've put in place on top of all of that is what we call morning gym. And every week, somebody from each platform is dedicated to check metrics manually every morning. So when they come into the office, they're going to check that business logs, that certain critical features are used in the expected way, that we don't have spikes in specific errors, and the performance is relatively stable. And that's something across the company we do in every team every morning. And it's important that it's manual, because you want a human brain to look at the metrics, and alerting sometimes is limits, and you want somebody to actually look at what's going on. This is important. Release life cycle is on top of everything I explained. There is still the problem that if you want to release a new feature, if it's not ready at the end of the week, you cannot release a feature. So how do you deal with that? So our approach with that is, I'm not going to go in order, but what we call feature activation, where we completely separated the process of releasing code and the process of releasing features. So when we build features, we merge into our release branches features that are in progress and that don't work, and it's okay because they are disabled. and we ship that every week. And once we are happy with the state of a feature after a month or two, maybe, we have what we call a feature flip, where remotely we're going to enable the feature for our users. So we don't have to worry about when is the launch date and how we're going to put that release on the market. It's done every single week by the teams, and then the business can decide when we actually launch something on the market. If I go back one step, the progressive rollout I'm talking about is we integrated in all our application a way that when we deploy something, since we're deploying usually to millions of users, you don't want to mess that up. So we have a system of progressive rollout that's going to essentially spread out the deployment of your release over 2 days or 3 days. So you can monitor constantly if something is going on, and you can turn it off at any moment. And the last thing is A/B test. So it's working similarly to the feature flipping system, but it's how you can actually deploy 2 versions of your feature and test how people react to one or the other. Or most likely you're going to say, I don't want to deploy that feature to everybody in my user base, so I'm going to deploy it to 10%, see how it goes, and then you can continue the deployment. So that's a little the things that we have in place to make sure that we can safely deploy any code on a very frequent basis without compromising what the business would ask about, oh, but I need that release to be shipped on that date. And so it separates a little bit the concerns of the development team and the concerns of the business. And obviously, each platform is slightly different, but I'm not going to go in the details here. So to wrap up everything I mentioned a little bit, all that looks great, but it's actually quite hard to achieve. I would say even at Dashlane, we're not there. Like there are still a lot of effort to keep pushing for that. So at some point, if you want to change a little bit how you operate, you really have to create a sense of urgency I've put, but really make an effort to actually dedicate resource to that. There is some sort of fear that happened because your processes are working today, even if they are not perfect, and the fact of changing completely or even shipping code that is not ready can be scary. But yeah, that's still a good idea, I would say. You need to keep working on having a smoother process. Every time you see something that's not working that well, continue fixing it. And at some point, I would say everybody realized that they are happy. Or the developers, it's less risky what they do, it's less stressful. The product division is happy, the business is happy because they have more flexibility on how they can deploy things. And when you look back at what you were doing as a company or as a team 3 or 4 years ago, even if it was hard to get there, you cannot really believe that it used to be this way, and it's not something you want to go back from. What's next for us a little bit? It's optimizing the speed. One question that we have a lot of time is, if we have a critical issue in production right now, how much time is going to take for us to deploy a fix? And if the answer is 1 day, 2 days, you probably want to work on that. If the answer is 1 hour, you're pretty good. Or depending on the business, but it's something that's interesting to measure. End-to-end test, it's never-ending thing, so you always have to keep investing on it. So that's what we do at Dashlane. We keep improving our tooling, we keep adding coverage, and then eventually it's about adding more things in your continuous integration system. So release notes typically is something that is not automated today, and we essentially don't do it because it's too painful. So having something that can help here would be great for us. And then you can add checks about security, about performance, things that would be great to add that we don't do today. And then one other aspect of improvement for us is to really switch to weekly releases for everyone. And yeah, I mentioned at the end, we're also changing actually the tool that we use for continuous integration to GitLab. Because, well, first of all, Bamboo is going to disappear, and it's going to allow us to have more powerful things and yeah, open new doors to all of this system. Thank you very much for your attention.